Surah Al-Qashash. Surah Al-Qashash consists of 88 verses including the Makkiyyah surahs. It is called Al-Qashash because in verse 25 of this chapter there is the word Al-Qashash, which means story. This verse explains that after Prophet Musa, Alaihi Salam, met Prophet Shuaib, Alaihi Salam, he told a story related to himself, namely his experience with Pharaoh. This was until the time he was hunted by Pharaoh for killing someone from the Qibthi nation without deliberate intention. Shuaib, Alaihi Salam, answered that Musa, Alaihi Salam, had survived the pursuit of the unjust people. The revelation of verse 25 of this chapter means a lot for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and for his companions who migrated to Medina. It adds to their belief that in the end the Muslims will win. This verse shows that whoever migrates from the enemy's place to defend the faith will definitely be successful in the struggle against the enemies of religion. The certainty of victory for the Muslims is emphasized at the end of this chapter, which states that after moving to Medina, the Muslims will return to Mecca as winners and upholders of the religion of Allah. The main points of Surah Al-Qashash. The story of the Prophet Moses and Pharaoh and God's will for the descendants of Israel, mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 1-6. These verses explain the story of Moses and Pharaoh, where Pharaoh tyrannized the earth, oppressed the descendants of Israel, and committed injustice against them. God desires to give grace to these oppressed people, make them leaders, and inherit the earth. Allah also confirmed the position of the descendants of Israel on earth, and showed Pharaoh and his army what they had always feared from the descendants of Israel. Moses, who was raised by Pharaoh's wife, mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 7-13. These verses tell the story of Moses and how his mother was inspired to place Moses in the Nile in a floating coffin, with the assurance that Moses would return to her as a messenger. The family of Pharaoh raised Moses, not realizing that Moses would become an enemy and a cause of sorrow for them. Pharaoh's wife, who then loved Moses, begged him not to kill him, but they did not realize that Moses would be the cause of their destruction. Although the heart of Moses' mother was almost revealed, Allah strengthened her heart so that she would be among the believers. Moses was then returned to his mother, fulfilling Allah's promise so that her heart would be happy and not sad, and so that she would know that Allah's promise is true, even though most people do not realize it. The murder of a man in Egypt by Moses happened unintentionally. This incident is mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash, verses 14-20. These verses tell the story of Moses, who, after growing up, was given wisdom and knowledge as a reward for the good deeds he had done. Musa accidentally killed a man during an argument between the Bani Israel and their enemies. Then he asked Allah for forgiveness for his mistake. Moses prayed not to be a helper for those who were disobedient, and because of this incident, he became afraid in the city. When Moses was about to strike his enemy, he was reminded that the city officials were planning to kill him, so Moses immediately left the city on the advice of a man who told him about the plan. Musa's departure to Madian is also mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, verses 21-28. After leaving the city in fear, Musa prayed to Allah to be saved from the unjust people. When he arrived in Madian, Musa prayed that Allah would guide him to the right path. At the Madian spring, Musa helped 2 women who were having difficulty watering their livestock, and in return, Musa was invited by the women's father to work, and married one of them after working for 8 or 10 years. Moses accepted the offer on fair terms, and the agreement was witnessed by God. The return of the prophet Moses to Egypt and the revelation is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, verses 29-32. When Moses had completed his allotted time for work, he set out with his wife and saw fire on the mountainside. Moses asked his family to wait while he approached the fire, and there he was called by God from a blessed tree. Allah revealed himself as Lord of the worlds to Moses, ordering Moses to throw his staff, which turned into a small snake. Although shocked, Musa was given a guarantee of safety by Allah and ordered to put his hand inside his shirt, which would glow white as a miracle to show to Pharaoh and his officials. The appointment of Harun as a prophet and his preaching to Pharaoh with Moses is mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 33 to 37. Musa appealed to Allah out of fear after killing someone, asking that his brother Harun be sent with him as his servant. Allah promised to strengthen Moses and Aaron and give both of them miracles as proof of the truth. When Musa and Harun came to Pharaoh with a miracle given by Allah, Pharaoh and his followers rejected it as mere magic. Musa stated that only Allah knows who will bring guidance and who will receive goodness in the afterlife, while the wrongdoers will not be lucky. Pharaoh's arrogance and its consequences and God's gift to Moses are mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 38 to 43. Pharaoh boasted and ordered Haman to build a tall building so he could see the God of Moses, believing that Moses was a liar. Pharaoh and his army were arrogant without good reason, thinking that they would not be returned to Allah, but they were punished by drowning in the sea as a result of their arrogance and cruelty. They are made leaders who invite people to hell, will not be helped on the day of judgment, and will be cursed in this world and the afterlife. Allah gave the book, the Torah, to Moses after destroying previous generations as a light, guidance, and mercy for humans. Proof of the truth of the Prophet Muhammad in his knowledge of the Prophet Moses. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash, verses 44 to 47. The Prophet Muhammad was not in the West when Allah delivered the message to Moses, nor was he with the people of Madian to recite Allah's verses to them, and was not near Mount Sinai when Allah called Moses. However, his knowledge of these events was due to grace from God, so that he could give warnings to people who had not received warnings before, so that they could learn. If they are struck with punishment, they cannot make excuses by the absence of a messenger sent to them, so that they can follow the verses of Allah and become believers. The disobedience of the infidels and their answers. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 48 to 51. When the truth of the Quran came to them, they rejected it by saying that the Quran and the Torah were magic that reinforced each other, and stated that they rejected both of them. The Prophet Muhammad was asked to challenge them by bringing a book that was more instructive than the Torah and the Quran, but if they cannot answer the challenge, it shows that they are only following their desires without guidance from Allah, and Allah does not give guidance to the wrongdoers. Allah sent down the Quran continuously so that they always remember it. Belief of some of the people of the book after hearing the Quran. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, verses 52 to 55. Those who were given the Bible before the Quran believed in it when it was read, declared its truth, and acknowledged that they were Muslims before. They were given a double reward for being patient, repelling evil with good, and donating part of the sustenance they were given. When they hear bad words, they move away, and affirm that everyone is responsible for their own deeds, say hello, and refuse to associate with stupid people. Only Allah can give guidance. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas verses 56 to 57. Allah guides whom He wills, and He knows best who is ready to accept guidance, not the Prophet Muhammad who guides those He loves. Although they feared that they would be expelled from their land if they followed guidance with the Prophet Muhammad, Allah reminded them that He has established their position in a safe sacred land with abundant sustenance, but most of them are unaware of this blessing. The destruction of a country due to believing the teachings of the Messenger, mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas verses 58 to 59. Allah recorded how many countries He had destroyed because of the pleasures of life that made their people negligent, so that their homes were no longer inhabited after them, except for a small portion that Allah inherited. God will not destroy a country before sending a messenger in its capital who recites His verses to its people. and Allah does not destroy the people of a country unless they act unjustly. Worldly pleasures are only temporary. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 60 to 61, Allah emphasizes that whatever He bestows on humans in the world is only temporary pleasures and its adornment, while what is with Allah is much better and eternal, but humans often do not understand this. The question is asked whether a person who is promised heaven by Allah and ultimately obtains it will be the same as a person who is only given the pleasures of worldly life, but on the day of judgment is among those who are dragged into hell, highlighting the importance of understanding the true value and eternity of Allah's grace. The condition of Mushrikians and their worship who are abandoned from each other in the afterlife. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 62 to 67. Allah reminds of the day when He called the polytheists and asked them where their alleged allies were, but they could not give a satisfactory answer. The idolatrous figures who were about to be punished tried to escape responsibility for the error they spread, but on that day they could no longer hide the truth and hoped that they had previously received guidance. On that day, when Allah called them and asked them for answers to the messengers, all reason was closed to them, and they could no longer question each other, while those who repent, believe and do good deeds are expected to be among the lucky ones. Only Allah has the right to determine something. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 68 to 70. Allah creates and chooses according to His will. There is no choice for humans but to accept His provisions, and He is most pure from all that they associate with. God knows all that is hidden and revealed in the hearts of humans because He is all-knowing. Allah is the only God who deserves to be worshipped. To Him belongs all praise in this world and the hereafter, and all decisions are His, and only to Him will all return. Allah is the one who deserves to be praised and grateful. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 71 to 73, Allah invites humans to reflect on His greatness with questions about, if He made the night continuous until the day of resurrection, who is the God other than Him who would bring light? And if He made the day continuous until the day of resurrection, who is the God other than Him who would bring the night as a time of rest? Reminding humans of His gifts that are manifested in the cycle of night and day to rest. Seek sustenance, and be grateful to Him. People who associate partners with Allah because of their lust. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 74 to 75, Allah will call people on the day of resurrection with questions about where their alleged allies are, and from each community there will be a witness who will be presented. Then they will be asked to prove the truth of their beliefs. At that time, humans will realize that true truth belongs only to Allah, and everything they previously claimed will disappear. Lessons from the Qarun story for humans, mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 76 to 78. Allah reminds us of Qarun who, although he was from the tribe of Musa, persecuted them and was given enormous wealth. When advised not to be too proud, Qarun instead stated that his wealth was obtained because of the knowledge he had, without realizing that Allah had destroyed previous generations who were stronger and richer. Allah advises humans to seek rewards in the afterlife without forgetting their obligations in this world, to do good to others, and to stay away from destructive actions, because He does not like those who do damage. The doom that befell Qarun, mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 79 to 82, Allah tells the story of Qarun who was arrogant about his wealth. It was stated that people who only wanted worldly life were jealous of him, while people who were gifted with knowledge realized that the reward from Allah was better for those who believed and did good deeds. Finally, Qarun and his house were sunk into the earth with no one able to help him apart from Allah, which made people who previously envied his position realize that sustenance and gifts only come from Allah, and they felt grateful for the blessings given. Enjoyment of the hereafter for the faithful believer, mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash verses 83 to 84. Allah explains that the land of the afterlife is reserved for those who do not boast and do no harm on earth, and heaven is intended for those who are pious. A better reward awaits those who bring goodness, while those who bring evil will receive a reward commensurate with the bad deeds they have committed. Conclusion of Surah Al-Qashash. Mentioned in Surah Al-Qashash, verses 85 to 88. Allah emphasized to the Prophet Muhammad that he was obligated to convey and adhere to the Quran and would return him to his place of return. The Prophet was asked to say that God knows best who brings guidance and who goes astray. The Quran was revealed as a mercy from God, and the Prophet was asked not to be a helper for unbelievers. Nothing should prevent the Prophet from conveying the verses of Allah after they were revealed to him, and he must continue to urge people to believe in God and not be among the polytheists. The Prophet was also ordered not to worship any god other than Allah, because only He is eternal and all decisions are in His authority, and only to Him will everything return. Conclusion of Surah Al-Qashash. Surah Al-Qashash was revealed at a time when the Muslims were in a weak state, while the polytheists of Mecca had great strength. In this chapter, Allah tells the story of Pharaoh, a king with unlimited power, and Qarun, who was rich and knowledgeable, but both were destroyed because they denied Allah's religion. In contrast, Prophet Musa, Alaihi Salam, who initially had nothing, achieved victory by following the religion of Allah. Verse 59 emphasizes that Allah destroys the countries whose inhabitants are oppressive. This chapter also conveys that even though the Muslims are weak, they will return to Mecca as victors after migrating to Medina, so they must continue to worship Allah, the Almighty Power. In the context of faith, this chapter emphasizes that God determines everything, and humans must be satisfied with His provisions. Nature is transitory, while God is eternal. The stories told include the cruelty of Pharaoh and God's help to the descendants of Israel, the journey of Moses, Alaihi Salam, from the Nile, to receiving the order to call Pharaoh, as well as the story of Qarun. Apart from that, this chapter explains that the Quran conveys the stories of the prophets as proof of the apostleship of Muhammad, PBUH, that people of the book who believe will receive a double reward, and emphasizes the importance of tyranny as the cause of the destruction of a people. This chapter also reminds that Allah will not punish a people before sending a messenger to them, and promises victory for the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH.